What's up, everybody? This is Trey Biddy with HawgSports.com, HawgSports.com. Arkansas Razorbacks coming off of a 13-10 loss to the LSU Tigers on Saturday. We're going to look back at that game, obviously, talk a little bit of recruiting with Danny West, look ahead to the Ole Miss game coming up on Saturday. It's going to be a cold one, and Andrew Ellis is also going to join us. All that and more on today's episode of HawgSports Live. Before we get started, I want to remind you there's plenty of ways to watch and listen. You can always tune in on Facebook Live. Be sure to follow the page if you haven't done so already. Also available on YouTube. Give us a thumbs up or a like on both of those channels. And subscribe to the YouTube page if you haven't done so already. And hit the notifications bell so you're alerted anytime we upload new videos. Also available on Apple Podcasts. We'd love to have that 5-star review from you. If you haven't done so already, let other people know what they can expect from the show. Also available on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and anywhere else you get your podcast. HawgSports is just $1 right now for your first month at HawgSports.com, or take 30% off for your first year. Does that bother anybody? Knuckle popping? That's how I feel. I've been knuckle popping kind of day. So, 13-10. Disappointing to lose anytime. I don't think people would be as upset right now today with the loss to LSU had they not, laid an egg against Liberty the week before. I thought they played pretty inspired overall, bouncing back, showed a lot of energy. The bottom line is, not having a quarterback in KJ Jefferson, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit. But first I want to get into this a little bit, what Sam Pittman said, because this has been something that I've been thinking about lately, because they're about to play a school in Ole Miss that has a bunch of starters that they got from the transfer portal, and they just played LSU, which LSU was down to like 39 or something scholarship players at one point. Both those teams had big transfer class hauls, and we talked about a little bit about how this could be something that could help level the playing field for Arkansas. And I still say this, I look out at the team, especially in the preseason. Now they're more banged up, but I look at them in the preseason, and you're like, man, this is a dang good it's a dang good looking team. I mean, they've got some really good looking athletes out there. And that's from the past, where you would have to maybe play a true freshman or a redshirt freshman or a guy that's not ready, fill in a spot. Because you can ask about this team right now. How does this team look if they don't have the transfer portal? How do they look without Drew Sanders, Jordan Dominic, Landon Jackson, Dwight McGlothern, Latavius Brini, Matt Landers, Jaden Hazelwood? Yeah, I know. So I think that it's kind of shifted today, and I asked Sam Pittman about that. It's kind of shifted from filling holes to just going out and getting guys, going out and getting players that you can help your team. And Pittman made a great point, and there's people that are jumping off and, wanting to fire the coach and all that stuff. But, you try to build a program up through the high school ranks these days, and you'll be fired before you get, those guys get mature. So you have to go out this day and age and go find the best players to field the best team, whether they're starters or backups or what. Because we're running into a situation now where Arkansas obviously has issues at quarterback. They obviously have issues at quarterback. And if they had a guy who you felt like was the next guy already on campus, maybe things would be a little bit different. But they don't have that guy. Like KJ Jefferson was to Felipe Franks, like Tyler Wilson was to Ryan Mallett. I'm going to talk about that more, but first I thought this was an interesting comment by Sam Pittman today, and we're going to get to that now. Or Ole Miss and you too, but Ole Miss and LSU, just what they did in the transfer portal, looking at last year, I think Ole Miss brought in like 17 guys.
Yeah.
LSU brought in a ton. You guys brought in a lot.
Yeah.
Is that changing your perception as maybe even as the year goes on, and just how much an impact the portal can have?
Yes. What's happened now is you're not locked to 25. You're locked to 85. And so, if you look at Ole Miss, I think 5 or 6 of their starters on defense are transfer portal guys, and offenses, I don't think quite that many, but they've got a lot of receivers that transferred in there, not necessarily starting, some are, but that transferred in there. Obviously, Zach Evans is a transfer guy, Dart, So, yeah, it has. to be perfectly honest with you, I'm not going to sit here and be bullheaded and lose a whole bunch of games and all that stuff, but because I don't believe that maybe that's the right way to do it. You know what I mean? I got to we had our share of transfer portal too. I hate the fact that we can't go and we can and recruit 20, 25 high school kids every year, but the world doesn't wait on you long enough. You know what I mean? It's, if you're trying to build a program within 4 or 5 years, you get to year 3 or whatever and you're gone. You know what I mean? So, and everybody wants to win now. So yes, I think it certainly has changed the way that I've looked at the transfer portal too. It's almost like for us, it's always been, where is our immediate need? That's where we're going to go. And that's it. We're going to tell the kids that we have on our team that, we need either depth or we need a starter there. When we do that, we know that. And I've been very conscious about that for our team. But now I think if you have a really good player, regardless of what position he is, and he wants to come, you take him, and before I wouldn't do that, before I was like, no, I'm going to be loyal to these guys. They're plenty good enough for us to win the SEC and stuff like that. But part of that too, Trey, has become with all the injuries that we've had this year. Your backup better be as good as your starter or close to it, and that's maybe shown a little bit for us this year, where if we had went in the transfer portal a little bit more, maybe we'd be a little bit better off record-wise and hopefully team-wise too.
Now, I typically don't play clips that long, but I thought that was a really important answer. And the reason I think it's important is because I think at Arkansas, and not just Arkansas, but across college football, we're going to see more activity in the transfer portal than ever before. The 25 cap is removed, for those who don't know. You don't have to sign 25 or fewer players every year. That's what it used to be. So those who don't know, it used to be 25 as a maximum you could put on scholarship in a given year, as long as you stay under 85 total. Now you just have to stay under 85 total. So things have changed. I think you look at programs like LSU, like Ole Miss, and even Arkansas too, to a lesser extent. Arkansas brought in like 9 guys out of the transfer portal. Most all of them are making pretty big impact. LSU, I can't remember. They had like the number 3 ranked class though, and Ole Miss was up there too, maybe number 1. Ole Miss brought in 17. A lot of key players. So one of the reasons that I'm bringing that up is just because of the situation at quarterback, and I don't mean to come down on Malik Hornsby, okay? It's not what I mean to do here, and I hope he doesn't take it that way. I said the same thing in my walk and talk. But like I was saying, if the next guy in line was on campus right now at quarterback, maybe things would be a little bit different for Arkansas. If like the obvious heir apparent, like KJ was to Felipe Franks. We saw KJ in the Missouri game. Obviously, Arkansas didn't lose that Missouri game in 2020 because of KJ Jefferson. It was Arkansas's defense. Just let him go straight down the field, kick a field goal to win it. Malik Hornsby, in my opinion, needs to continue playing quarterback this year. I think it was 100% the right choice by the staff to start him on Saturday. Now people are saying, "What do you mean?" I don't like to go back and like Monday morning quarterback stuff if I can avoid it. I think giving him the entire week of practice, letting him prepare as the starter, and then finally we can see what Malik Hornsby. We've been wanting to see for a couple of years what Malik Hornsby has, and it was a tough defense that he showed that he faced. But to me, this game was very telling that he's probably not the guy for the future at quarterback. I think the guy should be running go routes. I think that's where his future should be. But they need him at quarterback now. He has unbelievable speed that people would kill to have. I don't mean that way, especially that's maybe in, I don't know. First of all, I want to say my condolences also to the people that lost their lives at Virginia. Unbelievable that stuff like that happens. And that just made me think of that poorly used expression that I used. But Malik, to me, and I don't know that Cade Fortin is. I think you got a back and forth at quarterback there between those two guys to decide who goes if KJ can't go. But Arkansas can't beat Ole Miss without KJ Jefferson. They just can't. But that's my thoughts on the situation with Hornsby. And Arkansas has to get this corrected in the offseason. I think it would be in KJ Jefferson's best interest, just the way the season has gone with injuries and stuff, to return for another year. And I don't know how you bring in quarterbacks when you got an incumbent like that, unless he's younger and you say, hey, sit for a year under this guy, because Arkansas is razor thin at quarterback right now. I mean, they have 2 scholarship quarterbacks, and we're seeing how bad that's impacting them. And look at the teams across the country. This is how important quarterback is. Let's just focus on the SEC. So the worst teams in the SEC right now, not counting Vanderbilt. Congrats, Vanderbilt, on winning. But we're not counting Vanderbilt because they're kind of an outlier in all this. But the worst teams in the SEC, Arkansas, quarterback issues. I think Arkansas would win 7 games, would have 7 games under the belt right now if KJ Jefferson. Even an uninspired effort against Liberty, even the 4 choices that I mentioned, especially 3 on offense that I mentioned that I totally disagreed with in the walk and talk before they were happening, even those things would have been masked with good quarterback play. We wouldn't be talking about those things as much. And Kirby Smart and Lane Kiffin and Brian Kelly, all those guys, they make terrible in-game decisions too all the time. They've been masked a little bit. So Arkansas struggling because they've had KJ Jefferson minus 2 games and hobbled for a 3rd game where he was just kind of a shell of himself. Look at Auburn. Auburn ran off Bo Nix after verbally abusing him for years, and the same people that ran off Bo Nix only to have him replaced with Zach Calzada, who was hurt, are the same people who ran off Gus Malzahn only to see him replaced by Brian Harsin. So Calzada got hurt. Then they had TJ Finley, who's subpar SEC quarterback, and then he didn't get the job done. And now they've got Ashford, who's, really probably not quite ready for that stage yet. Missouri had their starting quarterback last year leave the program and transfer to Indiana, and they've got a first-year guy. Texas A&M lost Calzada. First, Haynes King got hurt in the first game last year. Then Calzada started all last year. Calzada transfers after the offseason. Haynes King starts. He's terrible. They bench him for Max Johnson, who's average. Max Johnson gets hurt, and then it's Connor Weigman. I think that's how you say his name. And he's a freshman not ready for that stage. Georgia has Stetson Bennett, the guy who led them to a national championship last year. Alabama has Bryce Young, who won the Heisman Trophy last year. Tennessee has Hendon Hooker, who also started last year, put up ridiculous numbers, and is the Heisman Trophy favorite this year. And LSU has Jaden Daniels, who didn't start for him last year, transferred in, but was a starter at Arizona State the year before. I don't think that's any coincidence that you got these 4 teams and these 4 teams. It's the most important position on the field. The reason I bring this up, somebody was in my comments on YouTube saying, because Pittman said, we're without our best player, which maybe it's an excuse, whatever. It's true. But he was like, how demoralizing this must be to all the rest of the players to hear that. Last I checked, they didn't have, he couldn't throw without an offensive line and stuff. I mean, come on. Like, people twisting things around the way they are to add more to their pile of fire the coach. Like, there's plenty of things you can complain about, but like that bugs me when people start saying like what you're really saying type of stuff, It just annoys me to see. Obviously, every single one of you out there, anybody with half a brain, if I said you can have your starting safety or your starting quarterback for this game, you'd pick the quarterback. You can have your starting tight end or you can have your starting quarterback. You can have this starting wide receiver, you can have your starting quarterback. I mean, starting left guard or your starting quarterback. Pretty easy stuff. Now, I want to get into this too, because obviously you aim high. You should be disappointed. I'm not telling anybody not to be disappointed that the team's 5-5 right now. I'm disappointed. I thought that they were going to be a lot better. I think if a couple of other things had gone differently, injuries in the secondary, not having KJ banged up, having some better depth behind KJ at quarterback in case you do get banged up, that's been something that really throughout history has separated Arkansas from blue blood type programs. A team like Alabama, Bryce Young goes out and this dude races 70 yards against you. Like they have players that they can go say next, and those guys are ready to go. And Arkansas historically hasn't had that. So what's the truth here? Does Arkansas suck? Relative to what? Relative to what does Arkansas suck? So what does it mean to suck? I can tell you. This is my opinion. So when I was in 5th grade, right about the age where I could really start appreciating, the intricacies of the game and starting to love Razorback football for what it actually is, not just being a little kid. They go 10-2. Next year they go 10-2. Okay? So I'm just like, this is how it always is, right? After that, the 90s hit. And there are 7 straight seasons there. I think 5 of those seasons they won 4 games. And maybe another one they won 6 or something like that. I knew they won 8. So they had 95 where they won 8. But aside from that, it was just pretty much, it was bad until 1998 when Houston Nutt came along. So Houston Nutt comes along, and then eventually he gets run off after he wins 10 games because people are tired of him. They're tired of hearing the same stuff. They don't like the way he's winning. He mishandled hiring an offensive coordinator that he never wanted in the first place, and his 5 high school students, one of whom was good enough to be an all-conference player and eventually go to the NFL. And that was Houston Nutt's undoing at Arkansas. Never mind, he was way better than the 2 guys before him. So that era in the 90s to me is the first dark age, because also what I'd learned as a kid was, they might be bad 1 year out of 10. 1 year out of 10, they might have a bad season. And that all changed in the 90s when Arkansas joined the SEC. 31 seasons now in the SEC. You want to know what Arkansas's record is, the unvarnished truth here? This is what Arkansas's overall record is since joining the SEC, 31 seasons. 192, 171, and 2. It's 53%. You want to know what their conference record is? Just before you get talking about how bad they suck compared to what? 102, 144, and 2. That's like 41%, people. 41% winning percentage in the SEC. I'm not saying don't aim high, but I'm also saying like you're wanting to torpedo the coach, the leadership of this program. And here's the thing too. It's going to happen. There's people out there, dark-siders, whatever you want to call them, nut huggers and dark-siders. There's dark-siders out there who want to fire the coach, who spew venom all the time. They live under a rain cloud for years until that one day where the sun peeks through and they get to say, I told you so. That one day. Me personally, most of us out there, I would hope, we're going to enjoy our time between when the coach is hired until he's fired, or when it gets to the point where it's obvious that he should be fired. We're going to enjoy our time there. We're going to complain. We're going to argue. But we're not going to spew venom. But for this group of people, you're always going to be right. Eventually, Sam Pittman will be fired at Arkansas or he'll retire. And he knows that. It's the way the game works. And he's made it pretty clear that he's not going somewhere. So the coaches that either leave your program for another one or eventually get fired very rarely ever retire. I mean, Nick Saban might be the only guy in however long to be able to pull that off. Eventually, you get fired. So eventually, anybody who's saying he should have been fired or I told you so or anything, you're going to be right eventually. It's just how do you want to live your life under a rain cloud? Not me. Eventually, it's going to come. And when it becomes the point where I think that they're better off without Pittman as coach, then I'll say it. He'll probably know it. When I feel like the balance of like you're worse off keeping him than getting rid of him, that moment might come. I like Sam Pittman. I think he's the right guy for the job right now. I don't care that they're 5-5. I mean, I care, but I don't care against the situation that it is right now. And I also will tell you, last year they won 9 games, and a big reason they won 9 games is because they had so many super seniors come back to the team. So many guys came back to the team. They filled some key spots in the transfer portal, obviously, John Ridgeway here and there. But having Grant Morgan, Hayden Henry, Myron Cunningham, so many key guys like that, leaders come back, really helped take them to the next level. This year, they didn't have as many super seniors. They did some work in the transfer portal, obviously, but some injuries have really cost them, especially at quarterback. I mean, if there's 7 wins right now, we're not sitting here talking like this. I'm going to get to you, Danny. We're going to get to Danny here in a second, but I'm on a roll. So, when Chad Morris was fired, nothing left to salvage. Had to go. It was over. Everybody could see that. It was over. Danny Ford was fired. I've already talked about that. 3 4-win seasons during his time there, including his last 2 in a row. Nobody's going to survive that. Back-to-back 4-win season. Nobody's surviving that. Houston Nutt, it was time for him to go just because the state was so divided, so torn, that it couldn't continue. He had to go. Whether he deserved to go or not may be a different story, especially when you look at things historically. Now, I think the transfer portal, as much as we're annoyed with it and all this stuff in NIL, it can be the great equalizer. It can be. Maybe it's why Alabama's having a hard time against some teams. It can balance, it can level the playing field in a big way. NIL and transfer portal. As annoying as it is to some of us, me included. So anyway, that's just what I want to say. Does Arkansas suck? And if they do suck, compared to what? Mediocrity is a word that gets thrown around a lot. You know what mediocrity means? It's a word that sounds a lot worse than the actual definition, because the definition just means being moderate. I would argue that Arkansas hasn't been moderate. I would argue that in terms of mediocrity, it means basically, when people say that about Arkansas, it means what the word sounds like, because it sounds worse. That's my thoughts on the matter. I'm not on a fire Sam Pittman. Is there going to be changes in this offseason? Absolutely going to be changes. There always is. I think we're going to see more than we've ever seen across college football this year, whether it's coaches, but especially players. It's just the way it is. People said they want it, and now they have it. This is college football. Before I get to Danny, I want to talk about my friends over at Ozarks Go. If you're wanting to transfer your internet service and you don't have Ozarks Go, I would say that's probably a good idea. Ozarks Go, I've been with 3 other internet service providers before I found Ozarks Go. When we made our last move, I was like, I'm done with these guys. I'm going to try somebody else. I looked up Ozarks Go. I talked to some people. They like the service. My experience has been 100% uptime. I haven't thought about them once since they came and installed the service. I don't unplug and replug. You can find out more about Ozarks Go and if they're available in your area by going to ozarksgo.net/hog, HAWG, ozarksgo.net/hog, or you can call them at 479-684-4900 to find out more information. Think north of the tunnel in northwest Arkansas. If you get Ozarks Electric bill, then you have access most likely to Ozarks Go. Even if you don't get Ozarks Electric, you might be in their area. And think northeastern Oklahoma also. Great service. Offer 100 megabits per second up and down, and I use 1,000 megabits per second, which is, if you like it instant, if you upload a lot of stuff like I do, then that's probably the way to go. But you can find out more about them just by going to the website. Again, ozarksgo.net/hog, HAWG. That hog is very important at the end there. All right, Danny West time. Had a lot of recruits in this last weekend, and going to have a lot more in this weekend because it's a 6:30 game, SEC Network, by the way. And by the way, kudos to the crowd. What an incredible crowd. I thought it was going to be like 20 minutes before kickoff. I was like, man, not a lot of people in here. and then they just started flooding in. It was a great crowd, I thought. You can follow Danny at Danny West 247 on Twitter. Danny.
What's up, Trey?
How you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good, man. What's going on today?
Oh, not much. We've been talking a lot about, just the state of the program and, maybe some things to expect at the end of the year. I was just telling everybody I think it's going to be the wildest in college football, the wildest offseason transfer portal in history, especially with, the 85, the new 85 limit. You don't have to sign just 25 or it was 25 plus 7, I think, with the transfer deal. But
sure.
even all that stuff's wiped out. It's just 85, which is kind of how it has to be now.
Yeah, kind of how it has to be. December 5th, I mean, man, I just can't imagine what's to come on December 5th. They're calling it Portal Monday.
Yeah.
And I would imagine it is going to be a wild one,
So it's a 60-day window, right,
window.
Danny? It's
45-day window.
Okay, 45-day window.
There's two different windows.
Right after the championship
15,
games are announced. Right after the championship games are announced, then that's when the portal window opens. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the windows. I thought Coach Pittman last week, I asked him about it, and I didn't even know that was his idea to come up with the period, right before that.
Sorry, you cut out, Danny. The what?
Oh, the dead period.
Oh, yeah.
4-day dead period that they came up with here. That was Coach Pittman's idea, and I like that. I think it gives you an opportunity to, get with your current team, see who you're going to have back, see who might be moving on, and that's really important. You need to know exactly how many spots you have. Mm-hmm. That's pretty important to know before you go crazy inviting every transfer in the world here. But, man, it should be a crazy one. I'm expecting, I don't think it's a bold statement to expect a lot of turnover here at Arkansas. You're going to have players coming and going as usual. That's just the way it is now, and I'm trying to gear up for it too, man. It's coming. But, on top of that, you've also got maybe a few late official visits coming up. Mm-hmm. You got the contact period. Coaches have to get out on the road again and go do in-home visits and make sure everything's right with their current committed guys. I think it's really important too. You've had them for 6 months now. You better make sure they sign, right? So you got to go out and please the mamas and daddies and make sure everybody's got their T's crossed, I guess. So that's all coming up, here in the next couple of weeks. I've got a story on HawgSports right now. It's just titled Key Upcoming Recruiting Dates. Mm-hmm. Couldn't think of anything better to call it because that's exactly what it is.
That's exactly what it is. So
we're right around the corner.
So Portal Monday on the 5th, and then are you saying then there's a 4-day dead period? Is that what it is?
No, I may have misspoke on that, but the 4-day dead period starts November 28th.
Okay.
And runs through December 1st. So that's the 4 days where the coaches get to meet with their current players. And 4 days ought to be plenty, to meet with everybody and find out who's coming and going. But, man, I really like that idea. And Coach Pitt deserves credit for that. I'm sure there were other coaches who thought of, the same thing. He didn't trademark it, but really a good idea there. I think they're trying, Trey. I mean, it's been a mess, but man, they're trying to make this thing easier for everybody, and I'm a fan of the windows. Now, after I get through this next 45 days, I may not be.
Yeah.
But so far, I'm a fan of what they're the new approach, I should say.
Danny West joining us. Again, you can follow him at Danny West 24/7 on Twitter, and he's the HawgSports recruiting analyst. You need a VIP subscription if you want to read most of Danny's content. And, man, when we get to the transfer portal stuff, we're going to be all over it. It's going to be really a team effort, Danny, just because it's going to be such a hectic time. But just we'll get to that. We'll get to the transfer stuff.
That's coming. Yeah.
It's coming. Right now, you've got a 6:30 game. It's the first one since, Missouri State, I guess, at home, the first night game. Should have a really terrific group of visitors coming in if they can make it with the weather that we're about to get.
Yeah, I'm a little bit worried about that myself. I mean, that's coming too, but it's going to be a cold one. I like that for Arkansas, though, Trey. I don't think Ole Miss likes that. A night game, finally. I think that works to your advantage. The kids have shown up. They've shown up all year. credit to Arkansas staff when the season has not played out the way anybody expected. I think that's a fair statement, but it hasn't really impacted recruiting yet, in terms of getting kids on campus. They're still – you look at last week's visit list, man, Davon Hall, Josh Flowers, Michael Hawkins, Devon Mitchell, Landon Pace. Orlando Pace's son was on campus. That's pretty impressive, So they're getting the right guys on campus. I understand you've got to win now with what you've got, and that's really, really hard because most of the time LSU's and other teams of the West, they're going to have better players, so it's really, really tough. But recruiting has not really dipped yet as a result of, what's happened on the field this season. I'm not saying they're terrible. They're still in the ball game for a bowl game and everything like that, so it's not just falling apart. But right. I have been impressed by the visit list that have come across so far, and you mentioned it there. Ole Miss ought to be another good one. Sitting here looking at some of the early names now. Of course, we'll add names throughout the week, but Dalen McCutcheon, 2024 wide receiver out of Lovejoy High School, Lucas, Texas. That's Bumper Pool's school, and he's going to be on campus. There's a chance Peyton Pierce might join him. Of course, a 2024 four-star linebacker. He told me last week that there's a chance he'll be here for that. If not, it's going to be right after the first of the year, after you come out of that dead period. So Peyton's been here many times. I know a lot of people have questioned, is Arkansas starting to fall behind there? I don't think so. I really don't. He's been here several times, and he told me late in the summer, he said, I'm probably not going to come to very many games this year at Arkansas. I've been there so many times. And I'd kind of like to go see, some of the Midwest Big Ten type programs and travel a little bit. So I don't blame him for that. I would too if I was him. So Peyton, I think they're in a pretty good spot still with Peyton Pierce. But TJ Metcalf, his younger brother, of course, Tevis Metcalf is for next year's class of 2024 DB. Both of those guys will be there. I think Luke Brown, your 23 four-star offensive line commit, he's going to be in town this weekend as well. So still got a few, I want to say 3 guys on this current committed list. Still haven't taken their official visit here. So a little bit tricky with playoff games and, this and that. Some of these new dead periods kind of makes it tricky in that regard, but expect to see a few more officials out of those, and then who knows, maybe a late JUCO player here and there. We'll see.
What do you think they're done with this recruiting class, Danny? You think there's room for another guy or two?
I think there's room. If they're going to be really, really picky, though. I think it would have to be a defensive lineman, a DB that they feel really good about, because obviously D-line, we talk about it every week on this show. You've got to bridge the gap somehow, and if there's one out there that they feel really strongly about, I think they would take a flyer on an interior type guy, even a pass rusher. But outside of that, DBs seems like they've offered a couple down the stretch here. JUCO guys. Forgive me, I don't have the guy's name right in front of me. I failed on this one, Trey, but I've written about the guy. He's a JUCO DB, and like I mentioned earlier, it could be a late official visit from what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I remember seeing the article. We had a long conversation about the last JUCO DB that had an impact at Arkansas, or I think JUCO cornerback was more the discussion, which I think maybe
good topic.
Darius Vanette was a pretty good one for Arkansas.
Yeah, he was fine. Yeah.
I'll never forget talking with Darius Vanette one day leaving the practice field, and he had his shoulder pads, his helmet, locked into his shoulder pads walking, and he was like, "Look at all this stuff we get." He's used to playing at the dirt fields of a JUCO. He's like, and this is before Arkansas had a football operations facility and all the other stuff they had, but he was just blown away with everything that they had access to as far as equipment and nutrition and all that stuff.
I've got one similar to that, Trey. Kiero Small. Everybody loves Kiero. Still talk to him every now and then. He's doing great in life. But he told me one time when he first got to Arkansas, for the first couple of months there, he would watch everybody go over and grab Gatorade, and down it. And he would always go to the water fountain. And one day somebody asked him, why don't you drink Gatorade ever? He said, hell, I got to pay for that. And eventually they're going to charge me for that. And they're like, no, dude, you can have Gatorade. It's on the house.
That's awesome.
So he's just down in the free water over there.
That's hilarious. Yeah. Is he at Michigan still? He's not Michigan, is he?
Yeah.
Is he still at Michigan?
I think he's still up there. haven't talked to him in a little
Strength
while.
and conditioning,
prior to the
right?
season, he was still there. Yeah.
Kieran, he's a good dude. All right, Danny.
Great dude.
Anything else you want to add before we move on?
No, that flew by, man. It's always quick.
Yeah.
Hey, I will say this. I don't know if you've talked about him. I'm sure you have. You've done all the walk and talk and all the post-game analysis. But Chris Paul Jr., man, I'm sitting here rewatching the game earlier. They need more of that, wherever they can find that. But I thought, he just deserves a lot of credit. It seems to me he and Drew Sanders just play at a different gear. You know what I mean?
You think a couple sacks are good? That's good.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, he has been playing really well, especially since Bumper's been so banged up and can't go as much as he needed to. Pupal has really stepped up and has been playing well for a while. All right, brother.
Anyway, just wanted to throw that out. I'll let Andrew have it from here. Appreciate you.
All right, everybody. That's Danny West. Again, follow Danny at Danny West 24/7 on Twitter. He's the HawgSports recruiting analyst. Been covering Razorback recruiting for a long, long time. I don't even know what we're going to talk to Andrew Ellis about, but I'm sure he's going to say something. Andrew's that guy in the press box who makes a lot of funny comments. Andrew.
Trey, what's going on?
I was just telling everybody how you need to tone down in the press box a little bit because you talk too much, you say too many funny things.
Hey, we're having a good time. We had it closed, so we were the only people there that were warm. So we're having a good time. The vibes were good.
I was walking up there. I was like, man, thank goodness I had my long johns. And I got up there, and it was sweltering in the press box. They were treating us good. Andrew, what are your impressions on the game Saturday? I mean, you and I actually, looking back at our predictions, I predicted Arkansas to win 29-28. I think you had LSU predicted to win. You're the only one that really nailed it because you had, I think, Arkansas losing by 3 points in that one, which a lot of people were telling both of us, like, you guys are crazy, but we know how SEC football works.
I like how you left out a key detail there in comparing our predictions, considering that you predicted them to win the football game. But,
yes. I did say that.
I know, but we both predicted them to win. Shout out to Cade Fortin for making me a smart man by having that touchdown late in the game to cover the spread. That was nice.
Yeah.
But thank God I was paid to watch that game because it just wasn't a fun football game. It really wasn't. It just seemed like neither team played well, and it was everything we predicted it would be for LSU, where you have a team that's coming off of a huge win and probably not as motivated for this one, and they're in the cold weather. I mean, offensively, they didn't do much. I mean, they ran the ball pretty well, but not a ton of huge plays through the air. And Arkansas, we the big question all week was KJ going to play? The answer was no, and it played out the way that many thought it might. I will say I'm just a little surprised by how ineffective the offense was with Malik Hornsby. I mean, it's not like I was expecting this guy to come, light it up or anything, but you saw what he could do at Mississippi State. They made some huge plays and kind of did some interesting things with him. You'd think they had 2 weeks to prepare for him as a starting quarterback, that they'd have a few tricks up their sleeve, but man, it was just, they just couldn't get anything going. And obviously he missed some throws here and there, but I was just stunned by the overall lack of confidence.
The only two passes that he
him.
had completed were like behind the line of scrimmage, I think. Right? I mean, maybe he had one to Hazelwood that was a short slant or something, but LSU has a different level of athletes than Liberty. I actually think Malik could have fared okay against Liberty. But when you talk about the athletes that LSU have, especially my Lord Harold Perkins, man, that guy's insanely good. But I just feel like it was just too much for him, where his speed was negated so much, and you're just relying on him to be a passer. It opened a lot of eyes, I think, about where Arkansas's quarterback situation is and maybe where it needs to go in the future.
No, you're absolutely right. And, Liberty definitely wouldn't have a guy like Harold Perkins who's going to catch him from behind. And, Pittman talked about it after the game about how, the Arkansas hasn't been making many guys miss and stuff. And Hornsby, that was kind of the biggest surprise with him is, he got to the edge and could make some things happen, but he just really wasn't able to truly get loose as a runner either. And obviously a stacked box contributed to that. And, Pittman talked today about how they need to throw more on first down and be more aggressive offensively. And it's something that they've said a lot. I just figured that, with Hornsby, who, has his inconsistency as a passer, but I just figured they were going to be able to do more with him and with Cade Fortin for that matter. I mean, they had the one nice drive there, but there just really wasn't much going on. And it's going to be interesting to see what this offense looks like if KJ Jefferson is able to return this week, because if KJ's able to come back and offense looks great, he throws all over the field and they move the ball, score 30-plus, and really play well against Ole Miss, it's a lot easier to look back in hindsight on this season and say, well, if you'd had KJ healthy for 12 games, it's a completely different year, and that's very valid. But if this offense still has issues this weekend and their offensive line continues to regress the way it has and the run game is just non-existent, then all of a sudden you got to start looking in the mirror and realizing there's more problems than just the quarterback position. But I do agree with you that quarterback position can completely change the dynamic of the Arkansas offense, and obviously we saw that Saturday.
Yeah, Andrew Ellis joining us again. Follow him at Andrew Ellis 24/7 on Twitter. Andrew covers a little bit of everything: basketball, football, even helps with recruiting. You're going to be a busy man when the transfer portal comes, because that's going to be, I think it's going to be the wildest year ever for transfer portal. Andrew, basketball. Were you in on Muss's press conference a little bit ago?
I was able to. I didn't know if it would work out timing wise with this show today, but yes, I was able to talk to Muss for a little bit today. Yes.
What did you think of his comments today? Obviously, Arkansas plays South Dakota State on Wednesday. What is that, 7 o'clock Wednesday, SEC Network Plus, and then it's off to Maui. What are your thoughts on the way the basketball season is going? Arkansas, by the way, up to number 9 in the AP poll.
Well, I'm just happy that, now that we're able to talk to Coach Musselman, it's clear that he's not completely frustrated with every aspect of his team, which was the case a couple weeks ago. It seemed like those press conferences were just – it was like we were at a funeral. I mean, he did not want to talk about his team. He's starting to open up a little bit more and kind of talk about what this team can do rather than what they need to improve on. And, they still have a lot to work on. But, man, the effort they played with Friday on the defensive end of the floor especially was just outstanding. I mean, there was a point where they just completely overwhelmed Fordham, who has a ton of experienced players. They have a guy who's been an all-league player in 2 different leagues, and Arkansas just completely dominated them. I think their point guard had 9 turnovers by himself, and there was a point where just Arkansas's athleticism overwhelmed them, which is something that we knew this team would be capable of. They have so much talent, all around, and key transfers. We figured, we knew this was a talented team, but we thought it would probably take a little bit longer, especially on the defensive end. I mean, last year's team was so good defensively, but they didn't really find their stride on that end until about, January, early February. And so there's still a lot to work on with this Arkansas basketball team, especially offensively. I think they're still going to face some challenges scoring the ball and shooting, especially when they're playing good teams. But the effort they played with on defense was just outstanding. And you can kind of see the vision of what this team's going to look like whenever they get the real Bud Walton crowds in there and they're getting rolling and they can just go on those runs that just overwhelm teams.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add, Andrew?
Yes, Trey. Actually, I have one quick rant, and it's about people showing up to football games on time.
Oh.
How often this year have we looked at the crowd about 5 minutes before kickoff, and we're like, man, just a small crowd. Like, I don't know what's going on. And then halfway through the first quarter, you look up and you're like, oh, there's 72,000 people here. Like, where did they come from? Why do people not show up to football games on time? And I get it. It's tough to, get, to your seat. It's tough to get through the, they had the week 1 situation where they weren't letting people in and all that. But, guys, just show up on time for the football game or kind of prepare for that. You're going to have to walk to the stadium. You're going to have to probably wait in a line. Just show up early. Show up on time. I don't understand how that's that difficult. But
well, I can tell you one part of it is the traffic flow kind of sucks, in my opinion. They expanded Maple, first of all, and instead of allowing traffic to flow freely right there, instead they decided to have a concert, and they blocked off Maple. So they expand the street. So when they were expanding the street, I remember thinking, oh, this is great. Just be able to pop right in. And I think I was maybe for a moment able to do that. And then they were like, we're going to have Hogtown. And then Hogtown's fine. I just think move it over off the middle of the street so you can have free-flowing traffic all the way around. I think that's one big part of the problem, especially we're talking about an 11 o'clock game, so. But, yeah, that was definitely the case. We thought it was going to be a really bad crowd, and then suddenly it was a really good crowd.
Yeah, you're right. I'll give them a pass because it was 11 a.m.
All right, everybody, you get a pass.
You get a pass for this week. But this week, 6:30 kickoff, Hogtown's there. The traffic sucks. You're going to have to wait in the line. Just show up early to the game. You don't have to get there 2 hours early. I get it's cold, but come on, guys. Let's get it together.
All right. Says the guy who doesn't have to pay for his ticket.
Hey, but I show up on time.
You do that. I think you beat me every time. All right, everybody. That's Andrew Ellis. Appreciate you, Andrew.
Thank you.
Just for the record, that was not me complaining about the fans. That was Andrew, so take it up with Andrew. I've learned my lesson on that a long time ago. All right. I just peruse a couple of things real quick. Running a little bit late. Joey Moses says, so 41% is great for you. No, that's not what I said, Joey. I can tell where this is going. Do you believe the coaches have did a great job? Do you believe the coaches have did a great job? Why do we keep hearing year after year excuses? This is getting really old. So that is one thing that bugs me. Like the people out there that deal in absolutes and like you can't have any excuses. Like people tell me stuff like I'll come down and break down like why Arkansas won or lost. All I hear is excuses. Like I can talk about the team. Like there are people out there who think anything that comes out of my mouth is an excuse. I can rip Sam Pittman to shreds if I want to, or I can talk about why they lost the game. And if I do that, there's a group of people out there who are like, that's an excuse. I can make an excuse for other people. I can talk about why they lost the game. That's not me making excuses for them. It's me talking about why they lost the game. If I'm on here saying the audio's cut out or I'm just too tired to do the show or this or that, that's me making excuses about myself, which would be considered unacceptable. For Sam Pittman to go up there and make excuses about himself, that would be too. But there's a faction of people out there. Only a Sith deals in absolutes. I'll just leave it at that. This is really getting old. How long has it been getting old, Joey? Has it been getting old for 31 years? Because that's how long it's been where Arkansas has been pretty mediocre as a football program. I see an opportunity here for them to rise above. I talked a little bit about the 90s. The 8 years before Sam Pittman got to Arkansas is the worst 8-year stretch in program history. The worst 8-year stretch in program history. They had a 17-game streak where they did not win an SEC game, and then they beat it. I think it was 20 games. But now it's getting old. They won 9 games last year. They've had a lot of problems this year. They won 5 games, and now it's getting old, Joey Moses. Now it's gotten old. Some people listen to themselves. Please tell me coaches do not matter. Brian Kelly, they were getting ready to run his ass out of Notre Dame a few years ago. Ready to run his ass out of there. He's been a coach forever, but they were ready to get done with him. So, yeah, coaches matter. They matter. But this dude's going to get fired one day, and people are going to be saying the same stuff about him. Pay attention. Pay attention to what's going on. Look around. Look around a little bit. Man, I get frustrated with some people. And no, like this thing, so 41% is great for you. I didn't say that. That's exactly the kind of people I'm talking about who twist things around so it can fit their narrative and they can put it on their fire the coach pile or this is what you said or that's what you said. Drives me crazy. Norman Hunt says at one point somebody rented a plane with a trailer on the tail fin. Houston Nutt must go. Yeah, I think it was Fire Houston Nutt. I saw it. I think it was in Little Rock when I saw it. I mean, that kind of stuff is insane. It's insane. I get like wanting the coach to go or thinking he needs to be fired. The truth of the matter is Houston Nutt probably didn't need to be fired. The truth of the matter is the state was completely torn apart. And then the next thing you know, you hire Bobby Petrino. He has 2 great seasons. He puts his motorcycle in the ditch, and that's the first domino of a string of dominoes that led to the worst 8-year stretch in program history. So I would ask, there was the nut huggers and the dark siders. And the dark siders right after the end said, we won. Did you? What did you change? I'm not saying the nut huggers were right, but were the Darksiders right? Nobody was right. Everybody lost. We all lost. Congratulations. Tore the state apart over it. All this talk about KJ Jefferson, what he's going to go compete with Jackson Dart at Ole Miss. I mean, what are people talking about right now? All right, the show's over. That's it. Thanks for joining me, everybody. This has been Trey Biddy with HawgSports.com. I got to mention Ozarks Go one more time. We're going to mention Ozarks Go. The only people that haven't ticked me off today is Ozarks Go. OzarksGo.net/Hawg, HAWG. The people that you can rely on time and time again, consistently there for you. Ozarks Go. Go check them out. They offer 100 megabits per second up and down. Up and down. Not just up, not just down. So if you like uploading stuff like I do, this right now, this is powered by Ozarks Go. What you're watching right now, this rant, me getting ticked off, that's Ozarks Go. That's providing it and streaming it into your homes and on your phones and your smart devices and whatnot. OzarksGo.net. They also offer 1,000 megabits per second, which is like that. It is instantaneous. It's up and down also. And, you know, I tell you another thing that I like about these guys is if you do have a problem, which my experience is you won't, if you do have a problem or if you're moving or something or if you need to talk to somebody, you want to call them at 479-684-4900. You'll be talking to one of your neighbors from this region. You're not going to get shipped off to a call center. It's not going to be some long wait time. And they're not going to trick you with some low introductory price and then jack your price up the next year. What you pay the first year will be the same you pay for the next year. Okay? OzarksGo.net/Hawg, HAWG. Go check them out. All right, thanks to Danny. Thanks to Andrew. Thanks to all of you. I love 99% of you. Thanks for making the show popular. I appreciate everybody. All right, everybody. This has been Trey Biddy with HawgSports.com. And we'll catch you next time.